and welcome to my 10,000 subscriber special. I'm also doing this in front of a live studio audience. So I set up a questionnaire on Instagram and YouTube for everyone to go and submit their questions, and I got over 100 responses, so let's jump right into it. Let's start with the personal stuff. So Thomas Sornig says, talk about yourself, not just as an enthusiast. Who are you? Who wants to know? So my name's Chris. I'm 31 years old. I'm a business analyst for an insurance company. I work right here in my loft. And I've been married for 7 years, and most of you know Sophia. She is my 6-year-old daughter. Katie McCauley says, where are you from? I'm from Valencia, California, which is literally the same town that Magic Mountain's in. It's about 3 miles from my house. NikkiMan526 says, when did you start your channel? And my first video came out in April 2018. Texas Coaster says, what inspired you to make a YouTube channel about roller coasters? So I'd watched YouTube for a while before I started my channel. The channel that really got me into it was Canada Coaster Fan, because he was able to do a lot of interesting topics without any production value. I thought I could kind of do the same thing. Zek the Keck says, how long were you considering making a YouTube channel? And I don't know, a few months, and then I was just trying to consider what it might look like, and then I eventually started doing it right before I went on my big cross-country trip. Coaster Craziness says, any tips to grow a coaster channel in specific? Pieces of advice. The first thing is to make sure that whatever you do, it's done in a unique way. Even if it's not an original idea, make sure that you do it in some way that makes it interesting. And my other thing is, whatever you do, make sure it's at the highest quality as you can possibly make it. Coaster Dave says, what do you use to edit? I use a program called Coral Visual Studio. East Coasters says, what are your favorite non-coaster YouTubers? And frankly, I don't watch non-coaster YouTubers. I only have maybe like 45 to an hour a day to watch YouTube, and usually I use that time to support other coaster YouTubers. So that brings us to Jacob Aird saying, what are your favorite coaster YouTubers? And I watch quite a few channels, and those who I watch, you know that I watch because I always comment. But the 3 that I really like the most are Coaster Studios, Theme Park Crazy, and El Toro Ryan. Andrew Lindquist says, make a video of how and why you became a coaster enthusiast. Now Andrew, that video already exists. It was actually my very first video, and the quality is pretty bad, but it does tell my story. So that is going to be in the card up there. 20Trey20 says, what inspired you to become an enthusiast? I think a lot of people in my situation become enthusiasts. The people who were afraid of coasters up to a certain point and then overcome that fear, once they overcome that fear, they become like hardcore into coasters, and that was my story. The Devil Butterfly writes, what was the roller coaster to really get you into being an enthusiast? And that one is probably Montezuma's Revenge. Was really the first one, but I would maybe credit it to Goliath at Magic Mountain, because that was one that I was really afraid to ride at first. Once I conquered that fear, it became like this big deal to me. Ethan Saucy 1234 says, when did you know that you were going to be a full-time coaster enthusiast? And I don't know if I'm really a full-time coaster enthusiast because I do a lot of other things, but I guess once my YouTube channel kind of started getting going, then I started spending a lot more time on YouTube, so that probably happened last summer. Astrolopsium says, what was your first roller coaster? And I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to say it was probably the West Coaster at the Santa Monica Pier. And that probably took place in 1998. Devin Schroth says, is the whole family into coasters, or is it just your thing? So, my brother is the one that comes with me on most of my trips. I've also taken my wife on some trips too, and as you can see, Sophie likes roller coasters and she's growing in her enthusiasm. But nobody else in my family really is a coaster enthusiast except for me. Henry the Coaster Enthusiast says, when do you think Sophie is going to be tall enough to ride the big rides like X2? And actually she is already tall enough to ride the 48-inch coasters. But some coasters are just a little bit too crazy for her right now. She's still 6 years old, so we're gonna kind of ease her into the crazier 48-inch coasters. Ben Holland says, can we get more vlog-style content with family? The videos with Sophie are great. And I try to include Sophie in as many vlogs as I can. She doesn't come to too many of the parks with me yet, but as she does, there'll be a lot more videos with Sophie. Trips and Off Music says, were you ever a ride operator or worked at a theme park? And yes, I did work at Magic Mountain from 2003 to 2011, so pretty much all of high school and then college. Mr. Stark says, tips on getting a girlfriend. And I actually have really good advice for this, and it's really simple. There's just one thing you have to remember, and that is, and that's it. You're good to go. Transport Coaster says, how do you plan coaster trips? First I see how much time I have, and then I want to see where I want to go and what's on the way. And then you try to kind of see what parks you're going to hit on certain days, like you don't want to hit Cedar Point on Saturday. So it depends on where I'm going, how much time I have. You really just try to hit as many parks as you can in the amount of time that you have. Ruined says, how much does it cost for a cross-country trip, all things considered? And the more people you travel with, the better, because you can split gas and hotel costs. When I went with my brother on the cross-country trip, which was 3.5 weeks in 2018, it personally cost me about $3,200. Coaster Lover 26 says, most credits on a trip. And on that cross-country trip I just mentioned, we hit 123 new credits. Thomas Rosie Fan says, what parks do you plan to hit on your 2020 trip? And I'll make another video about my big 2020 trip. I do plan on going to Hollywood Nights at Holiday World in May, probably a Northern California trip also. But the big trip's going to be one that starts in Kansas City and goes up through the northern US, through Canada, down to New York, New Jersey, through Pennsylvania, back through Ohio, and then back to Kansas City. So you can kind of get an idea about what parks I'm going to hit there. But yeah, that one's going to be about a 2-week trip. Switchback Coaster says, are you coming down to Florida next year? I don't know about next year. If I feel crazy, I might go down for Gwazi's opening. More likely, I'll probably go in the off-season after Iron Gwazi opens. Probably like February or March of 2021. Iron Rattler Fanboy says, when will you come back to Texas? And I never really plan to go to Texas, it just kind of happens. I usually go a couple times a year for work or for whatever other reason. So I'll probably end up there pretty soon. M. Nucci says, when do you think you'll be returning to King's Dominion? And I really have no plans to go back to King's Dominion anytime in the future. Maybe 2021, but I'm not sure. Coaster Fan 98 says, most anticipated parks in the US you haven't been to. And I've really tried to get to all the really good parks in the US. I think the biggest park I haven't been to in the US is probably Disney's Animal Kingdom. Ethan VM84 says, are you ever gonna take a coaster trip to Europe? And I really want to, but going to Europe's a really big deal. It's not just like flying to the East Coast for a weekend or anything. It's, international air travel. So I don't have anything planned. Theme Park Tracker says, do you plan on making trips to ride the international RMCs one day? And I would absolutely like to. Right now they're in Japan, Europe, Mexico, so hopefully one day, but I have no idea how long it's going to take. Roller Coaster Junkie says, if you can go on one big trip around one country for coasters, what would it be? That's an easy one, Germany. Alright, so let's get into questions about my home park. And the first question is from the Coaster Corner. What's your favorite thing about your home park? And my home park's obviously Magic Mountain. My favorite thing about it is, for one, it's got a ton of roller coasters. We have a world-class RMC, and it's open every single day. West Coast Coaster says, how often do you go to Magic Mountain, and what days do you go? So during the summer, I probably go twice a week, and then in the off-season, I try to go at least one day on the weekend. Devin Crum says, do you hate Tatsu as much as I do? I don't hate Tatsu, but I can see where some people wouldn't like it because of the pretzel loop, because that element is crazy and it's not for everybody. X2 Tatsu says, how many times have you rode X2? So I've been riding X2 for almost 20 years now, back when it was X, and I would say in the ballpark of maybe like 75 times. Richard F. Papa says, so is West Coast Racers open yet? Yes or no?
No, man.
If I had to guess, I would say maybe sometime in November. Person GJR says, what do you think is the best airtime moment at Six Flags Magic Mountain? And I would say it's the camelback on Twisted Colossus. Twitchit says, would Magic Mountain ever get a Sky Screamer? And I think they absolutely will. I think that's kind of the logical next thing for them. Vintage Brick says, if you can add any coaster to your home park, what would it be? And based on what Magic Mountain needs, I would say I would put a coaster like Diamondback, a B&M Hyper full of floater airtime. Braden Leland says, if you can pick any ride to have at your home park, which one would you pick? And I would probably go with Forbidden Journey, because that ride is ridiculous. Riley SCZC says, what is your favorite coaster at Magic Mountain or Knott's Berry Farm? So that would be Twisted Colossus and Ghost Rider. Both coasters are in my top 10. Coleslaw says, do you think Six Flags America is one of the worst Six Flags parks? Yeah.
Oh, wow, yeah. Why? Did somebody say you weren't?
Marcelli Tucker Zudra says, what are some of the worst parks you've been to? I don't really think that a lot of parks are bad. I think the only two parks that I've been to that I think are really not that good are Six Flags America and Elitch Gardens. Elliot Simpson 23 says, worst coaster at Cedar Point? Corkscrew. Garoots Animal says, what is the worst state to live in for roller coasters? I think it's Montana, because there's nothing there and there's really nothing around you either. Alright, let's talk airtime. John Papa Andrea says, do you prefer inversions or airtime? Airtime thrills. Roller Coaster Addict says, what is your favorite inversion? And that goes to the Top Gun stall in Twisted Colossus. Adam Richards says, can you describe the sensation when experiencing airtime? And it's basically one of the few times that you can actually feel weightless on Earth. It's the Man says, what was your craziest airtime moment on a coaster? And it's kind of surprising, but I would say it's the first drop on Wildfire at Silver Dollar City, because that thing absolutely ejected me out. I was not expecting that. Okay, let's talk about favorites. Banshee Beast says, favorite coaster, shirt, merchandise you own? And pretty obvious, right? Luke MPLS says, what's your favorite place to talk about coasters online? And I would say it's probably Instagram. A Channel 24 says, what's your favorite coaster element? And I'd probably choose Camelbacks. Coaster Noah says, what's your favorite East Coast coasters? I think nothing beats El Toro and Fury 325. B Chapel 1001 says, what is your favorite coaster manufacturer? And I think it's an easy one, that's RMC. Joseph Bat 18 says, favorite flat ride? If you're excluding the dark rides from Disney, I would say my favorite flat ride is Crisanity at Magic Mountain. It's Me Vortex says, what is your favorite coaster not in the US? So I've only ridden coasters in the US and Canada, so I guess the answer to this question would be Leviathan. Jeff Cunningham says, what is your favorite cloned ride Six Flags has produced? And that one goes to Mr. Freeze at Six Flags St. Louis and over Texas. Alexi says, favorite and least favorite restraints? So my favorite's gotta be Buzz Bars, because there really is no restraint there. Least favorite, obviously, Sky Rush. Coaster Chris says, what's your favorite B&M Hyper? Diamondback. A Pig says, favorite mine train? Thunderation at Silver Dollar City. Enzo G has two questions. First one, top 5 Disney rides. Incredicoaster, Space Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, Radiator Springs Racers, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Enzo G also says, what's your favorite dark ride? And that one goes to the Forbidden Journey. Gamer Legend says, what's your favorite coaster by Mack Rides? That's another easy one, Time Traveler. Zen says, what's your favorite company other than RMC? And that's a close one between B&M and Intamin, but I'm going to give it to Intamin. Thomas Rosie-Fan says, what's your favorite GCI coaster? Mystic Timbers. Thomas Rosie-Fan also writes, what's your favorite B&M coaster? And that would be Fury. The Coaster Carter says, what's your favorite non-coaster thing to do at a park? And I would say either get pictures, get video, or get food. Andrew Cruder 22 says, top 3 Cedar Fair parks. So my top 2 parks overall are Cedar Point and Kings Island. And then I say the third one is probably Carowinds. Dame Douglas says, what's your favorite coaster from a small-time park? That one's tricky. I would probably give that honor to Phoenix. Frightastic says, what's the best and worst park food you've eaten? I haven't really eaten any bad park food. I mean, I used to work in food service, so maybe some of the stuff we used to make there. But the best was actually at Magic Mountain also. It was during Fright Fest a couple years ago, and they called them Chaos Wings. And they would drizzle like cheese, ranch dressing, buffalo sauce, and bacon bits on chicken strips. And it was great, but now that whole restaurant's been taken out for the West Coast Racers rehaul, so they're not there anymore. Constitution Fanatic says, top 5 parks you've been to. So I have a video about this that shows my top 10 parks. So number 1, Cedar Point, Kings Island, Silver Dollar City, Great Adventure, and Magic Mountain. Coaster Odyssey says, what airtimes truly thrill you?
Is that a serious question?
Well, if that is a real question, I can give you a real answer. My favorite kind of airtime is sustained ejector. And I much prefer anything sustained, floater or ejector, over the quick pops or the weak floater. Bastian Morawski says, what was your favorite coaster in 2002? So 2002 is the first year I went to Cedar Point. So afterwards I had a pretty solid top 20, but my number 1 in 2002 was still Ghost Rider. Nicholas Ridding says, favorite pizza place? And that has to go to Roundtable. Alright, let's play a this or that. Roberto Castro says, where do you have more fun? Disneyland, Universal, or Six Flags? And I'm not a huge fan of Universal. I love Six Flags. I think the most fun I've had at a park is when we have really good days at Disneyland. The Big Schmoke says, what was rougher, Mean Streak or Son of Beast? They were both terrible. I would say Son of Beast was rougher. Coaster Mania Emerson says, I-305 or Sky Rush? And I think I famously don't really like either of these coasters. I actually do enjoy I-305, but I don't like Sky Rush, so I would say I-305. ImpyBot says, Silver Dollar City or Dollywood? And for me, hands down right now, it's Silver Dollar City. Alan Just Pick says, do you think Roar is rougher than Hellcat or Wildcat at lake compounds? I haven't been on Hellcat or Wildcat yet, but Roar is pretty bad, so I can't tell you, but Roar is pretty rough. Alright, let's get into questions about most, best, least, worst, all that stuff. Zavian V says, what do you think is your rarest credit? I think it's probably Windjammer at Knott's Berry Farm, because it only opened for 4 years, and that was like 20 years ago. The Coaster Cactus says, the most underrated Cedar Point coaster. I'd probably say Gemini. Thrill Coaster says, what's the most overrated and underrated coaster? I think I'm going to make videos about both of these topics, but the ones that come to mind for overrated is Kumba at Busch Gardens, and underrated Viper at Great America. Spinal Bullet says, what's the most intense lateral moment on a coaster you've ridden? And that's tough, I'd probably say the Helix on Ghost Rider. Eves Rock Plays says, what was your best day ever and worst day at a park? And it's hard to really pinpoint the best day. I've had amazing days at Cedar Point, Kings Island, Silver Dollar City, Six Flags New England, Carowinds. It's hard to pick a best one. The worst one's more easy, and I have a vlog coming out on that soon. That one went to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Coaster Lover 26 says, most ridden ride in one day. That is Ghost Rider with 16. DDD Doomsday. What is the most charming park you've ever been to? I think it's Silver Dollar City. Scale says, what's the oldest coaster you've ridden? That honor goes to Jackrabbit at Kennywood. That is 99 years old. Ben12 Swag says, most surprising coaster. I would say the coasters that surprised me the most were Viper at Great America and Comet at Hershey Park. Raptor Alex says, what was your favorite video to edit? And I would say it's probably my 2 music videos I did early on. One of them was Carol of the Bells, and the other one was my 2019 credits video with the Fall Out Boy song. So I'll put those links in the description if you want to check those out. UN Cross says, the jankiest coaster you've been on that feels like it's gonna collapse. And I've been on some pretty janky coasters. I would say the one that was the worst was Blue Streak at Conneaut Lake. The Coaster Carter says, number 1 bucket list coaster. I think right now it's probably Expedition GeForce. Theme Park Nerd 11 says, what international country is on the top of your coaster bucket list? Germany. Coaster Thomason says, which coaster in the US did you not ride yet, but would like to ride in the near future? So right now, my biggest bucket list US coaster is Renegade at Valley Fair. Alright, let's get analytical. Eli Gilbert 123 says, what do you think of Carowinds? I think Carowinds is improving massively, but it still has a lot of not so good coasters that they need to take out. Thomas Rosie fan says, what do you think about water slides? I don't do water parks. Hayden Buell says, what 5 parks would you tell the GP to visit if they want to become an enthusiast? I think that if you visit Magic Mountain, Cedar Point, Kings Island, Carowinds, and Dollywood, you kind of get a good mix of everything. Coaster Insanity says, do you think that Orion will be the worst Giga? Yeah, probably. ArgeBarge825 says, would you be upset if Toro got RMC? Don't touch Toro. Disneyland Roblox Metal says, will the Six Flags Park in Saudi Arabia be a bust or will it work? I think it'll work, it probably just won't look like they think it will look like. KSP Texan writes, which coaster manufacturer do you think has improved the most over the years? I think it's definitely Vekoma. Max Theme Park says, when is the point you consider a ride to be too rough? I know that Max doesn't believe in roughness, but if the ride jerks your head around so much that it gives you a headache, then it's too rough. Trevor ATL Dive says, thoughts on Iron Gwazi, will it be better than Steel Vengeance? I think it has a shot to be number 2, but it doesn't have the length to compete with Steel Vengeance. Alex Assay says, will California's Great America become a top 5 Cedar Fair park in 10 years? I think it has a shot. All it has to do is really surpass King's Dominion and Knott's to be in the top 5, and I think it could do that. Tyler Joseph says, where do you think the first T-Rex will be put? I think it's a toss-up between Cedar Point, Magic Mountain, and Six Flags Great America. Eli COG says, where will the next Giga go to? And I would say one of the Busch Gardens parks. Black Hawks Vision says, do you think that Six Flags and SeaWorld are better with their new business models? Well, Six Flags has been with their business model for almost a decade. It seems like it's working for them. SeaWorld's just barely starting their new one, so we'll see how it works out. Marcelli Takazudra says, would you consider a Larson Loop and a Skywarp to be a coaster? I haven't done a lot of analysis on this. I'm just going off what RCDB says, and they say that Larson Loops no, Skywarps yes. Alright, let's get to the more random questions. Young Graph says, what's a hidden or lesser known credit that you want? And personally, I think it's those screaming squirrels that have those crazy beyond vertical drops in those upside down sections. Coaster Craziness says, what's something that you wish most rides had? And I would say better restraints. Space Creeper says, have you ever had an experience of having your hand slap a support? And no, I don't really try to either, but I know people who have, and they're crazy. Wisco Coaster Thuzy says, You have a Great America Top 10. And I haven't been to Great America since 2017, so I need to get back there and kind of reassess the rides. He also says, do you play roller coaster games, RCT, Planet Coaster, and No Limits 2? I've only played RCT, and I've played that for a long time. Stamford Bridge says, as an enthusiast, do you love the movie Roller Coaster or do you treasure it? I saw Roller Coaster a long time ago. It's probably time to rewatch that. Trips and Off Music says, have you ever gotten stuck on a roller coaster? And yes, it's happened to me 3 times. Once on Goliath at Magic Mountain, once on Railblazer, and the other time I had to get evac'd off of Wavebreaker at SeaWorld. Roberto Castro says, please explain what a B&M rattle is. The B&M rattle is the worst. It's pretty much this vibration throughout the whole ride that just shakes your brain and really gives you a headache. Alex H says, would you seriously date or court someone who doesn't like coasters? Yeah, absolutely.
A girl is allowed to be crazy, as long as she is equally hot.
C.RO.B says, how do you convince your parents to take y'all to better parks than Disney? And I would say Disney's expensive, other parks are cheaper. Black and White says, do you have any tips on being brave and going on stuff like B&Ms and RMCs? And I would just say, the rides are safe, just get on it and do it, and you'll feel way better once it's over. Scale says, can you do the winners and losers of the SeaWorld parks? And I don't think they have any losers right now, so maybe down the line, yes, but right now I can't. Iron Rattler Fanboy says, who has more coaster credits, El Toro, Ryan, or you? And Ryan's got me by like 100 credits right now, so what are you gonna do?
Yo, what's up, dudes?
Coaster Brain says, what do you like to do other than roller coasters? So I'd say my other big hobby other than coasters is sports. I'm a big baseball and football fan. Obama Alert says, why do you like the Philadelphia Eagles? And it's actually kind of a long story about that, but basically, growing up in LA in the 90s, we didn't have a football team, so we all just kind of adopted a random team. And I like the Eagles back when they had Donovan McNabb, so that's why I chose them. Marpro Waymer Enthusiast says, what's going to be your credit 400? And I actually already got my 400th credit, and it was Trimmers at Silverwood. XDCQ says, what ride is in your picture? And that's a good question. That's Nitro at Great Adventure. And a good question to end this session on is from Kimmy Chan. What is your dream or goal for this channel? And honestly, I don't really have a dream or a goal for the channel. I'm just making content and see how fast it can grow. I have been able to travel a little bit more because of the channel, but I don't really have any expectations for it, so I'm just enjoying it while it lasts. So thank you guys so much for joining this Q&A session for my 10,000 subscribers. Hopefully I can do this again when I hit 20,000, see how long that takes. So guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.